Hey everyone, welcome to Digging In. Last month, Trisha Collins joined us, our Director of Coaching at Eagle Center for Leadership, and she spoke to us about 3 ways to lead ourselves. I had the thought of let's build off of Trisha because of the awareness that she created for us, and let's dive a little deeper. So today we want to think about how can we take those concepts and look at them at the next level. Just to remind you, 3 things she talked about. As a leader, we need to be mindful of our EQ. You remember EQ, you've heard about EQ, you've experienced EQ training through Eagle Center for Leadership, you've learned about EQ, you know it's the measurement of your emotional intelligence. Trisha reminded us that, we need to know how we're doing. We need to know how are we coming across to other people and being mindful of our empathy and what we provide others, checking ourselves. Also, she talked to us about being mindful of how are we choosing to develop ourselves, our intellect, how are we challenging ourselves. And then she said, hey, let's put this together and be aware of holistically how those 2 align and check our health. As a leader, are we being mindful of our own health? Such great points that we need to dive deeper. So today, let's look at 4 types of intelligence: EQ, IQ, SQ, and AQ. So you're familiar with EQ, you're familiar with IQ. SQ is social quotient. The quotient is that measurement. And so being aware of how you interact with others from a social relationship standpoint. That's not what I want to talk about today. I want us to think about the last one, adversity quotient, because I really think it's important. How do we deal with adversity? Being mindful of what do we do with that and how do we use that to truly develop ourselves. So let's think about this. You've had adversity. You've gone through lots of different things this past year. Adversity is really that measurement of how we come out on the other side. What do we do with those hardships? What do we do with those difficult situations? And how does it shape us when we get to the other side? Not really in the path there, the journey there, but when we've reached that other side. So when we think about adversity can be on a continuum. It can be something that's irritating and annoying, an adversity in a relationship. It could be a significant event that happens or occurs in our life at work or at home. But again, that adversity quotient is really figuring out what are we going to do with it. So here's some things that I want us to think about. I'm trying to think about. I'm trying to work on. The first piece is I want you to think about, how do you accept difficulties? How do you accept difficulties? We're all wired differently and we all handle and accept difficulties in different ways. Sometimes we may kind of push them away. We don't really want to deal with that difficulty. We don't really want to accept it because we don't really know what to do with it, or maybe we truly don't want to deal with it. So maybe sometimes we kind of avoid it. Sometimes we need to avoid it. Sometimes we don't. We may lean into it a little too much. Sometimes we might have lots of different levels of adversity, different intensities, and sometimes we may lean in it too much, kind of giving it too much control in our life, where it may spark a lot of different emotion, whether we handle that internally or externally. I want you to think about, how do you accept difficulties, adversity, and can you start looking at that in a different way? There's that third option of being agile and almost receptive, accepting of difficulties and adversity. What does that look like? Well, I think you have to know yourself. I think you have to know kind of where are you? How do you respond typically? What's your normal pattern? And you have to think about, how can I tweak that, adjust that a little bit? So maybe I receive difficulty and adversity and I I figure out what I want to do with that because I'm not resisting it, nor am I leaning into it so much. Something to think about. Also, here's a second question. How do you process difficulties? Do you internalize it? If you internalize it, do you sometimes become robotic in a sense that you don't respond to it? Maybe you over-process it internally. Maybe you disconnect from it. Do you externalize it? Do you just push it away? Do you work harder? Do you push harder? Do you just keep pushing kind of past yourself, maybe past the situation? There's a third option also. How can you be conscious and aware and maybe kind of fall in the middle? If you've heard of the wise mind before, falling in that middle ground where, you know what, you can think about it some internally and you can figure out how you want to respond to others through that difficulty. So how do you process difficulties and adversity? And then the third question is to really think about, if you're aware of how you accept it, if you're mindful and you're working on how you process it, well then what do you choose to do with difficulties? What do you actually choose to do with it? Remember that continuum of adversities, annoyance to maybe a truly life-changing situation. So what do you choose to do with it? Making it more about a choice. Making it more about, how am I going to respond in this situation? And am I going to allow myself to grow? Am I going to allow myself to be challenged to really change some of my behavior? Am I going to allow myself to just grow from it and get to that other side and allow it to make me stronger? I was talking to a leader just recently, and she was dealing with a very difficult situation, personally and professionally. And in that, she had to make some really solid decisions, had to make some changes in her life that weren't comfortable. Job change, life change. But in that situation, she had some options. It might not have been her character to really be comfortable with adversity. In fact, it's pretty uncomfortable. And so she had to make some choices of, am I going to choose to walk into this situation and be uncomfortable, allow it to be difficult, but choose to receive and accept that and choose to grow from it and really allow myself just to kind of be agile in the moment, just to be agile in this new time where things are truly uncomfortable. And she's doing a great job. She's doing a tremendous job. She's being uncomfortable and admitting that and really allowing that to be a strength right now versus a weakness. She's really using it so that she can connect with others that may be in a similar place. So choosing what we do with adversity. So in doing that, I want you to be careful. Be careful that you don't choose to go into all or none thinking at times where I think it's terrible. I think that I can't get through this. I think I don't want to deal with this right now. But instead, I want you to think about how you can be mentally agile so that you can choose what you control about the situation and what you can't control. And you choose how you're going to respond with your own behavior and to others. So, something to think about, something to challenge us as a leader. Really want you to think about, where do you fall in your AQ, your adversity quotient? What does it look like for yourself to grow, to be challenged, to deal with difficult things? What do you do in the middle of that? And really, what can you do at the end point where you can really allow yourself to learn and grow and be ready for the next piece of adversity that comes your way? Leading is not about ourselves. It is about challenging ourselves so we can really make an impact and influence other people. So remember, what you're doing is about leading. It's about digging in and making a true difference. So think about these things. Let's allow them to challenge us at the next level and allow it to make a difference.
To learn more about the concepts from this video, you can find Dr. Larry Little's book, Crossing the Line, available to purchase on Amazon and our website, eaglecenterforleadership.com. You can also find the podcast, Crossing the Line with Larry Little, available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or online at eaglecenterforleadership.com. Thank you for watching.